everyone. I'm Vlad. I'm pastor at Vision Church in Bromley. And with my dear friend and father figure, Pastor Paul Hodgson, we're looking at the topic of a minister and his or her relationships. So far, we covered the minister's relationship with God, with himself or herself, and with the spouse. So I want to encourage you to go and watch these episodes. Today, we're talking about a minister's relationship with his or her children. So welcome, Paul. My question is this, the first one. What does the relationship of being, in your case, both father and pastor or minister to your children look like from your own experience?
Well, obviously, children of a pastor, PKs, pastors' kids, have a slightly difficult relationship with the church in as far again as expectations of them is concerned. And I didn't even fully realize the expectations which were placed upon my children as they were growing up until later on, and they were looking back on their experience in church. So, but in terms of my own expectations of them, I knew what it was like to grow up in church because I'd done that myself. And it was very important for me to give them freedom to come to Christ themselves. And obviously, like I said, we prayed for our children. In fact, we prayed before they were born that we would not have any children unless they were going to be with us in heaven.
Wow.
And so, obviously, then we prayed for them every day of their lives up to this very day. And so I knew what it was like as a teenager to go through doubts and questions. And so I gave my children freedom to discover things for themselves. I'm extremely grateful to God that they never rebelled, that both of my kids came to church all through their childhood and in their teenage years as well. I think part of that was that they had friends in the church, which was very good. And so there were even one or two occasions when my wife and I was out preaching somewhere else, and my two children were at home as teenagers on a Sunday, and they could easily have not gone to church. But they did. They went of their own accord. We didn't say, we expect you to, or we want you to. They just went. And that happened a few times. And so I am very grateful to God for that they didn't rebel. And I think part of the fact they didn't rebel was that they didn't feel under pressure. They didn't feel under pressure to make a decision for Christ or to get baptized. They saw some of their friends get baptized, but they didn't. And it was only once I'd finished my ministry as a leader of a church that my son finally got baptized and worked through his doubts and questions as an 18-year-old, which was great. And that was somebody outside the family who he was lodging with who helped him through those questions. So I was very much aware of that from the beginning, and also didn't stop them from doing what other children did in terms of watching. I mean, we had some people in our church who didn't allow their children to watch Top of the Pops, which was
I don't know that.
Which was a weekly program playing all the top records of the day, number one downwards. And so my children never stopped from doing normal things like that. The only thing I did stop my daughter said that they couldn't do was to read Harry Potter.
Okay.
And my daughter never forgave me for that. But apart from that, we didn't curtail them in any way.
Yes.
We were careful about what they did and who they mixed with and who their friends were, obviously.
Yeah.
But they lived a normal childhood.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. Thank you for that. There's a passage that tends to come or being discussed about whenever we talk about a minister and his or her relationship to the children. So I was wondering if you can help us understand Proverbs 22:6, which says, "Train a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." So what does that mean? And more specifically, is this proverb a guaranteed promise or more of a spiritual principle?
I think it's more of a spiritual principle, to be honest. The Jesuits, they used to say, "Give me a child before he's 9, and I give you the man." And I think there's a lot of truth in that. That what we, as I said before, what we put into children when they're young is so vital. And I think that if we do seek to bring up our children in a godly way, in a scriptural way rather, according to Scripture, with discipline and spare the rod, spoil the child, which I know isn't modern at all. But we didn't have to hit our kids at all, hardly. I mean, one of the greatest tricks which that I taught my daughter-in-law with my little Rosa was, children always want more, don't they? So, they want another cookie, they want another sweetie or candy or whatever it may be. And so the trick that we did with our kids was always, okay then, one more, no more. And they knew that, okay, so they had their cravings satisfied, but they also knew that when we said no more, that was it. Yeah. And so it's just doing things like that with children. They need boundaries. I think that's extremely important. Yeah. That children need to know what the boundaries are. Yeah. And if they overstep those boundaries, they need to know what the consequences are. I think they also need to understand why. Yeah. When I was a child, very often my mum would say something to do this or not to do that. And I would always say, but why? And she would say, because I said so. And that used to make me really angry. So I have learnt that, we have to have a very good reason for saying no. And we have to be able to show our children why it's no, or why it's that way, why the boundaries are there. Yeah. And I think that if they understand the whys, if they understand what the boundaries are, that they will accept that.
I sometimes think, obviously I'm not yet a parent, nor did I grow up with my parents, and I'm thinking that one of the things that helped me throughout my childhood and teenagehood and all that is I had a real sense of God truly being my Father. And sometimes when I speak with parents, I say, as a non-parent, that God is way more invested as a father in your children than you are. And that's good news, because I can only imagine how much a parent would do for their children, how much more God, the Father. And sometimes jokingly I say, though, like I turned up relatively okay, like I'm following the Lord, even without the parents' guidance. And I think one of the most important things that we can do, both as parents and maybe as a church and as ministers, is to help people, and especially children, understand that God truly is their Father. And I remember, when I was 4 years old, and I went to the orphanage, I turned to God in my little understanding of Him. I said, God, you are now my Father and my mother. And I don't know, that just stayed with me and still stays to this day throughout the years. So one of the things I want to say is that God is actively invested in making sure that your children don't depart from the way. And our duty as adults or parents is to show them the way, and we trust God to lead them on the way as they grow up. That's a powerful thing for me to refer to as well.
Yes, indeed.
There's this other passage in the New Testament, which again many times is referred to, and people think about it, which basically speaks about how a minister must be able to manage his household well, because if he doesn't, how will he take care of God's church? So can you help us understand what that passage refers to? Because many people look at it and say, oh, all the children of a minister must be believers, otherwise he or she is disqualified from ministry.
Yes. Well, I think that children of a minister do need to be brought up in the fear of God, and they do need to be disciplined. And I think it's perfectly legitimate for everybody else to observe that is happening. And if it isn't happening, I think that actually that that person should question, should I be an elder in this church, or should I be doing what I'm doing? Because I think that basically if we have failed, obviously our children are responsible for what they do. So we're talking more in terms of when they're younger, disciplining them when they're young, in terms of also being in control of the home when they're teenagers. Once they're beyond that, that is their responsibility for the way that they're living.
Yeah, because even though they're your children, they're not children in the eyes of the world, because they're mature, right? They can make their own decisions then.
Yeah. So if, for example, sadly, somebody's child, let's say an elder's son or daughter, has got off the rails as an adult, I don't think that disqualifies you from being an elder anymore.
Yeah.
But I do think that if it's not happening, they're under control, as it were, in the right sense of control. As young children and as teenagers, if you haven't got your household under control, then I don't think you should be ministering as an elder or as a leader in a church.
Yeah, I think that's why even this passage uses words like manage your household. Right? It's like managing is about doing the best to the best of your ability to bring them in the way of the Lord, and you can manage them as their children, but it doesn't say the children, because that's how many people misinterpret this. It's like the children of a minister must be Christians. The passage doesn't say that, but anything, the minister's duty is that he or she manages their children in the way of the Lord, up to the point where, of course, it's their decision whether to follow God or not. So what we look for in a minister's life is how he or she manages children, rather than are the children believers. And I think this little difference can really help us understand even the expectations we might have from a minister. Because the idea of managing is that you are actively involved in their lives. So you're not idle, you're not passive as a parent. You are involved. You want to make sure they grow in this way of the Lord up to the point where they need to follow it for themselves. Right?
Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you, Paul, again for this, as well as we looked at the minister relationship with their children. And I'm looking forward to the next episode. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.